Las Vegas on New Year's Eve is often framed as spectacle. Fireworks, crowds, and celebration dominate the imagery, but beneath the surface, this single night functions as a concentrated test of American consumer confidence. It is one of the rare moments when discretionary spending, emotional readiness, and financial tolerance converge at scale. When New Year's Eve performs as expected, it signals that the middle class still feels secure enough to celebrate without hesitation. When it struggles, the problem is rarely local. It reflects a broader shift in how Americans view spending, risk, and reward. This discussion is not about tourism numbers or one disappointing event. It is about what Las Vegas reveals when a consumption-driven economy begins to change its behavior. The warning signs do not appear all at once. They emerge through pricing, psychology, and participation, and when they surface on New Year's Eve, they deserve attention. For decades, New Year's Eve in Las Vegas has been more than a party. It has quietly functioned as an economic stress test for the American consumer. Unlike surveys or quarterly reports, this event measures something more honest: whether ordinary Americans still feel financially secure enough to celebrate without hesitation. Las Vegas on New Year's Eve is not about necessity, it is about confidence. When people show up in large numbers, pay premium prices, and stay for multiple nights, it signals that the middle class believes their financial footing is stable enough to support symbolic spending. Historically, this single night concentrates the highest expectations of the hospitality industry. Demand is supposed to be guaranteed. Pricing is supposed to be firm. Hotels rarely discount. Flights rarely soften. The logic is simple. If Americans can justify splurging on one night a year, it will be this one. New Year's Eve in Las Vegas has always been designed as the ultimate permission to spend moment, where financial caution is temporarily suspended in favor of celebration. That is why warning signs during this period matter far more than they appear on the surface. When hotels begin offering steep discounts weeks before New Year's Eve, it is not a marketing strategy, it is a signal of demand failure. When prices collapse at the last minute, it suggests that forecasts based on historical behavior no longer apply. This is not about travelers being price conscious, it is about travelers being absent. The absence itself tells a deeper story. Most Americans did not stop working. Employment numbers remain relatively stable. Paychecks are still coming in, yet the space between income and security has narrowed. Housing costs, insurance premiums, healthcare expenses, and everyday necessities have quietly consumed what used to be discretionary income. New Year's Eve spending does not disappear because people suddenly hate travel. It disappears because symbolic spending becomes psychologically unsafe. A Las Vegas New Year's Eve trip is not essential. It represents emotional confidence. It signals that a household believes the future will be manageable enough to justify spending today. When that belief weakens, even once-a-year escapes begin to feel irresponsible. This is where consumer behavior shifts in ways that traditional economic data often misses. People are not broke, but they no longer feel free. New Year's Eve in Las Vegas is supposed to be immune to hesitation. When that immunity disappears, the problem is not Vegas. The problem is confidence. And when consumer confidence weakens at the symbolic level, the implications extend far beyond one night on the Strip. In the hospitality industry, pricing tells the truth long before executives do. Especially during New Year's Eve in Las Vegas, price movement is never accidental. This is one of the most predictable demand periods in the entire calendar. Hotels, airlines, and casinos build their annual forecasts around it. Demand is assumed, not questioned. That is why aggressive discounting during this window is not generosity. It is a warning signal. New Year's Eve in Las Vegas is supposed to be an example of inelastic demand. People who plan to come are expected to come regardless of price. That assumption has held true for decades. When demand is inelastic, prices rise or at least remain firm. Discounts are unnecessary because scarcity does the work. Once prices begin falling sharply, it means the underlying assumption has failed, not slightly, completely. The industry often reframes cheap hotel rooms as great deals for consumers, but this framing hides a more uncomfortable reality. Hospitality pricing is not designed to reward travelers. It is designed to protect revenue. When hotels slash rates close to the event, they are not trying to attract bargain hunters. They are trying to fill empty rooms that were supposed to be sold weeks earlier. This is not marketing creativity. It is damage control. Forecasting errors at this scale are rare and serious. Demand projections for New Year's Eve Eve are built using historical occupancy rates, booking velocity, airline capacity, and consumer behavior trends. When those projections collapse, it means something fundamental has changed. Not weather, not scheduling, not competition. Consumer behavior itself has shifted, and when behavior shifts during a supposedly guaranteed event, it forces the industry into panic mode. The panic shows up in the timing. Discounts appearing months in advance suggest uncertainty. Discounts appearing weeks before the event suggest anxiety. Discounts appearing days before New Year's Eve suggest desperation. At that point, pricing is no longer strategic. It becomes an attempt to salvage partial revenue rather than maximize profit. A discounted room is better than an empty room, even if it signals weakness. This is where the illusion breaks. Healthy demand does not require last-minute persuasion. Strong markets do not beg consumers to show up. When prices fall sharply during the most valuable nights of the year, it means supply has vastly outpaced actual willingness to spend. The problem is not that consumers want cheaper options. The problem is that too many consumers are not coming at all. When brutal discounts appear during an event that should never need them, the message is clear. This is not a celebration economy adjusting prices. This is an industry reacting to a shortfall it did not expect and cannot easily explain away. And in Las Vegas, where pricing efficiency is ruthlessly optimized, panic pricing rarely lies. Modern American consumption is not powered primarily by cash. It is powered by tolerance. Credit cards, buy now, pay later programs, reward points, and travel hacks have reshaped how people experience affordability. Spending no longer requires having money in hand. It requires believing that future income will be sufficient to absorb today's decisions. For years, this belief allowed consumption to expand even as real purchasing power weakened. Las Vegas thrived inside this system. The city became a testing ground for how far financial flexibility could stretch before breaking. Flights were booked with points. Hotel stays were split across cards. Entertainment was justified as a once-a-year exception. As long as consumers believed the debt was manageable, Vegas remained busy. The city did not depend on wealth, it depended on confidence in future repayment. A weak New Year's Eve in Las Vegas signals something more subtle than declining interest in travel. It suggests that consumers have reached a psychological boundary. This is not about people suddenly refusing to enjoy themselves. It is about people no longer feeling comfortable extending their financial obligations, even temporarily. When the mental cost of adding another payment outweighs the emotional reward of the experience, behavior changes. Debt fatigue is different from financial collapse. Many households are still meeting their obligations. Credit scores remain intact, minimum payments are being made, but the emotional relationship with debt has shifted. What once felt manageable now feels heavy. What once felt temporary now feels permanent. The constant awareness of balances, interest rates, and future payments creates a low-level stress that alters spending decisions in quiet but powerful ways. New Year's Eve in Las Vegas magnifies this effect. It requires upfront commitments. Flights, hotels, dining, and entertainment are booked before the experience occurs. There is no gradual spending. There is no trial period. The entire financial weight is felt immediately. For consumers already carrying layered debt, this creates a psychological barrier that discounts alone cannot remove. Cheaper prices do not eliminate the sense of accumulation. Las Vegas exposes this limit because it concentrates discretionary spending into a single decision. When consumers step back from that decision, it reveals that the debt-based consumption model is encountering resistance, not from lenders or regulators, but from consumers themselves. And when that resistance appears during a moment traditionally reserved for indulgence, it suggests that the psychological ceiling of consumer debt has already been reached. The most damaging shift in the American consumer economy is not purely financial, it is psychological. Many middle-class households are still employed, still paying their bills, and still functioning within the system. On paper, they are surviving, but emotionally, something has changed. The internal permission to celebrate has quietly disappeared. For decades, discretionary spending was justified by effort. Work created entitlement. If you showed up, stayed productive, and met your obligations, you earned the right to enjoy yourself occasionally. Las Vegas was built on this emotional logic. It did not sell rooms and shows. It sold validation. It told consumers that their hard work deserved a visible reward. That emotional contract has weakened. Today, many Americans do not feel comfortable celebrating, even when they technically can afford to. The concern is no longer about immediate affordability. It is about optics, responsibility, and future uncertainty. Spending on indulgence now feels risky even when income remains steady. Celebration has begun to feel premature. This shift matters because economies do not run solely on income. They run on justification. When people stop believing that enjoyment is deserved, discretionary spending collapses faster than traditional metrics predict. Las Vegas depends on that justification more than most cities. It thrives when consumers feel morally and emotionally authorized to spend without guilt. When that authorization disappears, the entire ecosystem suffers. Hotels lose bookings, restaurants lose reservations, shows lose audiences, casinos lose casual players. None of this happens because people hate entertainment. It happens because indulgence now competes with anxiety, and anxiety tends to win. This is why even discounted prices fail to restore demand. Lower costs do not repair broken permission. A cheaper room does not eliminate the feeling that money should be conserved. A deal does not override the fear that something unexpected lies ahead. Consumers are not calculating value, they are managing risk. Vegas reveals this transformation because it compresses emotional decision-making into a single moment. New Year's Eve forces consumers to answer one question clearly: do I feel safe enough to celebrate right now? When large numbers of people hesitate, the answer becomes visible. The loss of permission to celebrate is not loud. It does not appear in headlines or earnings calls, but its impact is severe. When the middle class no longer feels entitled to joy, industries built on aspiration begin to erode from the inside. And in that environment, Las Vegas does not fail gradually, it weakens all at once. Corporate confidence rarely collapses in public. Casino executives do not announce uncertainty in press releases or earnings calls. Official language remains optimistic, forward-looking, and carefully managed. The real signals appear elsewhere, in operational decisions that are too specific to be accidental. These are not strategic shifts, they are reactions. One of the clearest signs of executive anxiety is the sudden appearance of aggressive, poorly targeted promotions. When offers become unusually generous without clear segmentation, it suggests that demand is not materializing as expected. These promotions are not designed to build long-term loyalty. They are designed to stimulate immediate activity, regardless of quality. The goal shifts from optimizing revenue to creating movement. Complimentary offers reveal even more. Comps are not gifts. They are calculated investments intended to extract higher spending later. When comps become cheaper, broader, and easier to obtain, it indicates lowered expectations. Executives no longer assume that high-value behavior will follow. They are willing to trade future upside for present occupancy. That trade only makes sense in a defensive posture. Overbooking minor entertainment is another subtle signal. When casinos add excessive showtimes or promote secondary attractions aggressively, it reflects an attempt to manufacture the appearance of activity. These smaller events are easier to scale, quickly, and cheaper to promote. They create noise without requiring strong demand. The strategy favors optics over efficiency. The push toward low-roller engagement completes the picture. High-value players are limited in number and difficult to replace. When casinos pivot aggressively toward casual gamblers, it suggests that core revenue sources are underperforming. Volume becomes the objective, even if individual spend declines. This shift prioritizes foot traffic over profitability. None of these actions are catastrophic on their own, but together they form a pattern. Casinos begin acting less like precision machines and more like reactive systems. The focus narrows to filling space, creating activity, and preventing visible emptiness. Profit optimization gives way to survival tactics. This behavior is rarely acknowledged openly. Executives frame these moves as enhancing the guest experience or expanding accessibility. But beneath the language is a simpler reality. Confidence has weakened. When management stops protecting price integrity and starts chasing volume, it signals concern about demand durability. In Las Vegas, where margins are carefully engineered and data is relentlessly analyzed, this shift is not random. It reflects a recalibration of expectations. Casinos do not abandon discipline unless they believe conditions have changed. And when they do, it almost always means they are no longer playing offense. They are defending against a downturn they can already see forming. Las Vegas has never depended solely on planned travel. Its real economic engine has always been impulse. The city was designed for spontaneous decisions, last-minute flights, quick getaways, unplanned extensions, and emotional spending that occurs in the moment rather than on spreadsheets. When impulse travelers disappear, Vegas does not merely slow down, it changes character. Today, the composition of visitors tells a different story. The people still arriving are often there for reasons unrelated to desire. Conference attendees follow schedules set by employers. Business travelers attend meetings they did not choose. Certain high rollers arrive because their incentives are structured and insulated from everyday financial pressure. These visitors maintain volume, but they do not replace spontaneity. What is missing are the travelers who once filled the city with unpredictable energy. Middle-class couples choosing Las Vegas as a symbolic New Year's Eve escape. Groups of friends booking flights on a feeling rather than a calculation. Individuals extending stays simply because the experience felt worth it. These visitors were not guaranteed, but they were abundant, and they spent freely. Impulse travelers behave differently from mandatory ones. They upgrade rooms without hesitation. They add shows at the last minute. They dine impulsively, gamble casually, and stretch their budgets because the emotional reward justifies the cost. Their spending is scattered but significant. It flows through the entire ecosystem, touching hotels, restaurants, entertainment, and gaming floors simultaneously. Mandatory travelers do not behave this way. Their budgets are fixed, their time is constrained, their spending is deliberate and limited. They attend required events and leave. Even when occupancy appears stable, revenue density thins. The city feels active, but not alive. Movement replaces momentum. This shift matters because impulse spending is difficult to manufacture. It cannot be forced with promotions or incentives. It emerges from emotional readiness and financial flexibility. When consumers feel cautious or constrained, impulse disappears first. What remains is functional travel, not experiential travel. Las Vegas exposes this change quickly because it relies on layered spending. The initial trip is only the entry point. The real profit comes from unplanned decisions made after arrival. When visitors arrive with predetermined agendas and fixed limits, the secondary economy weakens. When a city built on impulse begins to fill with obligation-driven visitors, the consequences extend beyond attendance numbers. The economic model becomes misaligned. Vegas can survive without impulse in the short term, but it cannot thrive. And when impulse fades, the city does not crash dramatically. It slowly loses the energy that once made it exceptional. Las Vegas should not be viewed in isolation. It does not exist as a normal city with a diversified economic base. It exists as a concentration of discretionary spending, making it uniquely sensitive to changes in consumer behavior. For that reason, Vegas functions as a preview city. What appears there first often emerges elsewhere later. Service-driven cities across the United States share the same underlying dependency. Orlando, Nashville, New Orleans, and Miami rely heavily on visitors who spend for experience rather than necessity. Their economies are built on tourism, entertainment, dining, and hospitality. These sectors thrive when consumers feel confident enough to allocate money toward enjoyment instead of preservation. When New Year's Eve weekends in Las Vegas, it signals a contraction in discretionary demand at the national level. Vegas absorbs that contraction earlier because it sits at the far end of the consumption spectrum. It is where optional spending becomes most visible and most concentrated. If consumers hesitate here, it means the pullback has already begun elsewhere, even if it has not yet surfaced in local data. The delay between Vegas and other cities is structural. Vegas is designed for immediate feedback. Booking cycles are short, pricing adjusts rapidly, demand shifts are reflected in real time. Other cities experience the same forces, but with more inertia. Conferences are booked further out, events are spread across seasons, local demand masks early weakness. The impact arrives later, but it arrives all the same. This is why Vegas often appears to decline first. It is not more fragile, it is more honest. Its economy responds quickly to changes in sentiment, making it an early indicator rather than an outlier. By the time softness becomes undeniable in other service cities, Vegas has already gone through multiple adjustment cycles. The pattern is not theoretical. Past downturns have shown the same sequence. Vegas experiences compression in pricing and volume, followed months later by reduced occupancy, softer events, and declining spend in other tourist hubs. The cities differ in culture, but the consumer behind the spending is the same. A weak Vegas New Year's Eve is therefore not a localized failure. It is a signal with a lead time. It suggests that discretionary travel and entertainment across the country may face similar pressure within the next 1 to 2 years. The timeline varies, but the direction rarely does. Vegas does not fall last, it falls first. And when it does, it is not predicting collapse. It is warning of adjustment. The cities that depend on experience-based spending would be wise to pay attention, because by the time the effects become become visible locally, the opportunity to prepare has already passed. Visual evidence is persuasive, but it is often misleading. In coverage of Las Vegas, media narratives frequently rely on images of a crowded strip to suggest strength and recovery. Packed sidewalks, dense foot traffic, and nighttime crowds are presented as proof that demand remains intact. But activity and economic health are not the same thing. Foot traffic measures presence, not participation. A person walking the strip does not necessarily represent spending power. Crowds can form without transactions. Locals visiting free attractions, tourists passing through without staying overnight, and attendees drawn by no-cost events all contribute to the appearance of density. None of these guarantee meaningful revenue. What matters in a consumption-driven economy is not how many people are visible, but how much each person contributes. Spending per capita tells that story more accurately than footage ever could. When that number declines, revenue thins even if crowds remain. A busy street can coexist with weak balance sheets. Length of stay is another quiet indicator that visuals ignore. Healthy demand encourages extended visits. People linger when they feel comfortable spending over time. Shortened stays suggest caution. Travelers arrive, observe, and leave quickly. The city becomes a backdrop rather than a destination. Secondary spending exposes the gap even further. Shows, dining, and casual gambling rely on discretionary decisions made after arrival. When these categories soften, it means visitors are controlling their exposure. They may walk, watch, and photograph, but they avoid commitment. The experience becomes observational instead of participatory. Media narratives rarely highlight these distinctions because visuals are easier to sell than data. A crowded strip reassures audiences and supports optimistic headlines, but it can also mask structural weakness. High visibility with low conversion creates a comforting illusion while underlying performance deteriorates. This illusion is not accidental. It aligns with the incentives of tourism marketing and short-term sentiment management. Acknowledging declining spend would raise uncomfortable questions about consumer confidence and economic sustainability. Visual crowding offers a simpler story. Las Vegas makes this disconnect especially clear because its economy depends on depth, not surface activity. When spending metrics fall out of sync with visual density, it signals a shift in consumer behavior that cannot be captured by imagery alone. The strip may look alive, but without sustained transactions, it is merely occupied.